What is up? It is Coach Graham, the Barefoot Sprinter, and today we're on part 3 of our injury series. Now, this is specifically going to be about day 8 onward, so typically day 8 to 14. But this depends on the severity of your injury. So if we already covered day 0, that's going to be consistent for everybody. Day 1 through 7 could be a 1 through 3 phase, but then once you get to this third phase, it's time when you start to feel better. Now, the important thing is you never stop moving. Day 0, you're just dealing with the inflammation, you're dealing with the problem and accepting what's happening and trying to find a homeostasis for what's going on. Day 1 through 7, you're starting to unpack that. You're keeping moving going, but you're prioritizing, let's say, stable recovery. Now, the reason, again, this is pertinent for me is about 8 days ago, I separated my AC joint. So you notice the range of motion is getting better, the swelling is down from previous videos, and that's because I've stuck to the plan. Now, the important part to remember day 1 through 7 is it's a time for recovery. But that doesn't mean you're static. That doesn't mean you're not doing anything. Again, ice and cold isn't bad, but we want to focus on warmth. We want to focus on movement. We want to focus on getting our body and trusting what's happening in the process. There will be inflammation, where the inflammation that swells and packs the joint is creating a safety, it's a shield around whatever the injury is, whether it's an ankle, a knee, a hip, a shoulder. The process of healing in your body is always the same. So remember, we let the inflammation do its course, we let the body start to heal, and we let things start to layer down and refirm. And then, as we start to do that, we're pairing things like grounding, cold and warm, going back and forth in a contrast method. That way you can take some of the weight off. I think being in water is great to move because it takes some of the weight off, you can get some motion. You're just starting to prioritize that. Touching the earth, getting the sunlight, making sure you're sleeping, getting your food, all those things are important. But it's really being patient with that process. And every single day, you're gonna remember you're gonna get anywhere from 1 to 10% better. Now this is a challenging part because somewhere about 40 to 60% improvement, what you're gonna realize is that you have to continue to push into this process. Now, the single most important thing I could get you to visualize as part of this is how your body layers down new tissue. You have cells called fibroblasts, which lay down new fascial tissue. Now, what I want you to think about is this is like a snowblower. If you've ever seen one of those skiing courses, skiing resorts where they blow snow out, what fibroblasts do is they build new layers of fascia. They layer it down. And what I want you to think about is this is sticky. So your body is constantly doing this. It's why you're sitting down for a few hours, you get up, you feel stiff. It's why you shrink in size over time as you age if you stop moving. Your body is shrinking because things are getting layered down. New snow is falling and that is causing a stickiness and that is layering down. And over time that tissue becomes codified and ossified. That means it hardens because if it's not moving, it shouldn't be moving. And if it is moving, it should be getting range of motion. It should be getting pushing and pulling a stimulus to remodel. And so what happens is as soon as you have an injury, so I'll use this AC joint as an example. As soon as it got hurt and it found stability and the bones sat back together and kind of in a stable position, body's layering. And this is day 1 through day 7, all the way up. And I mean, it never really stops. It's just going to be stickier at times where your body's storing more on there. And that's what the inflammatory markers signal. It says, hey, something's going on here. We need to signal a layering, a stiffening of the tissue here to let it regroup. Same thing if you get a scab on your skin. It's a bunch of tissue that layers down. But the difference is that you have to continue to remodel and teach that tissue where it needs to go and how it needs to be conditioned. And this is why we have to unstick our body. And so day 8, or the third phase, what you have to start focusing on is moving this joint, moving the tissue along lines of motion. Meaning, if my shoulder can raise, if it can go in front, it can extend, it can flex, it can rotate, it can start to do all these things. Now, of course, you have to let pain be your guide here. But this is part 2, where you have to also think about turning your muscles on. Because there's an emotional experience here. So not only are we using movement and gravity to start to remodel and condition the tissue, reminding that we just threw a whole bunch of tissue on top of wherever the injury was. But now I don't want to walk around with a big, thick lump of connective tissue. I want that to smooth and push and pull, but it needs to happen intelligently. So we have to have movement. But the tissue is not firm. It is not adhesed yet. So think about if you layer down in glue, it's not held together. It's not stuck. So that's why you have to give it time to work. But it's not a binary. You're not nothing and then all the things. You're slowly working on. So that means as your tissue is starting to remodel and adhese and the inflammation is going down, your movement is starting to ramp up. And this is the problem with going to, and I'm not saying that traditional physical therapy, going to see a professional is a problem, but if you just say, I'm gonna go see my therapist in 4 days, and then 3 days after that, and then 2 times a week for the next 4 months, you're waiting days and days and days in between. And it's not necessarily that these exercises are the ones you have to prioritize, because this is just one letter in the alphabet. This is one letter in the alphabet. You want to think about the fact that your body and your joints can move in all these different ranges of motion. And if you lose that stimulus every single day, what happens is you stop getting the conditioning stimulus that pushes and pulls this fascia and remodels it. And also, anytime you have pain, your body uses that as a withdrawal stimulus. Meaning, if I touch a hot stove, I'm gonna pull my hand away. The same thing happens when I have an injury. That means you have to intentionally go back and remind the muscles how to engage. Because let's say traditionally, if I have a ankle sprain and my calf would push and extend and flex my ankle or extend my ankle, but that hurts, the calf is gonna be hesitant. In the same way, if you have a cut on the bottom of your foot, let's say your bottom of your toe, and you're walking on, you lift your foot up, you're going to immediately start to shift your movement and your body's engagement with that area to prevent stepping onto the pain. But in the occurrence of a soft tissue or some type of injury you're recovering from, there is a graded response of, okay, I don't need full muscle activation to be able to punch somebody, but I do need 20%. I need to get this muscle to turn back on. Most of the pains people have are from the tension that's held after the injury is started to heal. These are the compensations. So your job in phase 3 is to undo compensations. In general, what you're going to realize is the actual injury is relatively healed. It's not back to full capacity, and that's something we'll talk about in phase 4. But it is healed enough. It can handle some load. And so you do need to start to provide that load. The challenge is that you have to start to balance the pain and the stiffness that you've created for the last few days or week or two to undo that by actively engaging the muscle. For example, when I had a neck nerve injury, the muscles around the shoulder and the neck, and it got inhibited. They didn't want to move because it hurt. It was very like lightning stimulus to be able to recover from that. So I had to go in and just use bodybuilding to slowly turn on the tricep, slowly work on the bicep, slowly work on the delt and the pec and the lat. Because what you have to realize is these big muscles around your ankle, your knee, your hip, your shoulder, they form the shield. The muscles are the thing that keep your body engaged. They are the ones that control and absorb the force. They're producing the force that lets you move. And so if the big muscles, say pecs, your lats, biceps, your delts, and triceps, which are around the shoulder, or let's say around your hip, your glutes, your psoas, your obliques, your VMO, your hip flexors, if those muscles aren't working, then it shifts to these smaller stabilizer muscles, your rotator cuff muscles, your pec minor, your teres major, your teres minor, these smaller muscles that are supposed to stabilize the joint. They are working because the big muscles are turned off. That's the emotional response we have to fear. So your job is to say, can I find a range of motion? So for example, today I'm working on lat pull downs and pulling and engaging. Can I get in this position and find that muscle and control and contract the muscles, and you find it in a safe range of motion? This is the value of having some experience with bodybuilding, because you don't think, oh, the only exercise I know for a pec is a push-up. Well, there's a million different fly variations. You can do isometric, you hold a ball, you can press your forearms in, you can start to do fly, like cable flies, band flies, you can do a push-up, isometric hold. I mean, there are almost infinite variations for every single muscle. So your job is to get in and say, can I experiment and feel ways to get the muscles to flex around the injury site? Because that starts to create protection at the joint. And so not only are you taking the pain away from the overstimulated, overtensed, stabilized muscles around the joint, you're starting to actively get back into movement. So you see how these two things go together. It's not muscle or fascia, it's muscle and fascia. But the muscle movement is training the fascia along which lines to remodel, and that's conditioning the tissue. And then third, what you have to realize is after every acute trauma or even chronic trauma, it's like a PTSD, but instead of post-traumatic stress disorder, it's post-traumatic tension disorder. Right? Let's think about it like that. Meaning, so for example, you're walking around, even if you're wearing a sling or whatever, and for example, we'll talk about my shoulder, you're walking around for the last week holding your shoulder stiff because you're afraid to put load on it or catch it. So your entire body from, like for example, any part of your body that is contracted will affect every other part of the body. Your entire body is defensive around this one space. So I'm walking in a way so I can get down off the ground, I can move, I can rotate. I want to keep my body safe so that I can keep this safe. That creates a whole lot of tension. Everything from your spine, to your lungs, to your rib cage, to your neck, to your jaw, to your bicep, to your wrist, to your elbow, tricep, all of those things are affected too. And that tension creates a stiffness. And so moving through that stiffness is like pulling a Band-Aid off. Once that adhesion of the Band-Aid has gotten stuck to your skin, it's gonna hurt. In the same way, as you start to move the fascial tissue, so for example, under the collarbone, you have your CC joint, the AC ligaments, or CC ligaments, AC ligaments, around the traps, all of these muscles around here and the tissue that surrounds them have gotten stiff. So moving into that is going to feel painful. This is the difference between knowing the discomfort and knowing the pain. So the single best trick I could give you, the single best cue I could give you is to move slowly. If you move slowly, you'll be able to feel, ooh, that feels like it's unstable. It feels like something's about to shift. It feels like the actual joint can't handle it, versus it just feels kind of like I'm pulling and tearing some things apart. It's a very challenging, nuanced thing, but I have to trust that you have the intuition to be able to feel this, because it is your body. You want to know the difference between slowly stretching. If you could stretch and feel your body and feel those tissues pulling and engaging, versus, ooh, that joint feels like it's unstable or it's pulling, or let's say, because what you have to remember is, even if you have a ligamentous injury, let's say an ankle sprain, the point is not that the ligament is torn. Like, that's not really the issue. The issue is that the loss of stability at the joint, where the bones are sitting in this joint, the loss of stability there. So your cue is going to be, oh, that joint doesn't feel stable. Not necessarily, oh, that feels like something's tearing. Because the ligaments don't have pain, it's not a very strong receptor. You don't have an engagement to know, oh, that's a ligament that's stretching and pulling. But your fascia is, and the fascia wraps on everything. So there is feedback. And so you have to realize that there will be discomfort. And so much of that discomfort is an emotional response. And this is why you can move slowly, but you have to focus on the breath. When you get into a position and raising up, understand that at first you're gonna shift and make compensation. So for if my, let's say, delt in this case is off, meaning it's not necessarily engaged in a confident way, then I'm going to shift my body weight over and try to use other muscles to lift up, my traps or my neck, or let's say my upper pec. Those things are gonna be compensations. But if I can go slow and move and find a small range of motion and use the breath to center myself, it calms you down. And in that, then you focus on, I can reclaim degrees of motion. So for example, if a shoulder, I focused on, I got here, okay, now I can focus, 1, and just using the breath and raise a little bit higher, and you realize, okay, it feels painful, but after 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 reps, oh, I feel some blood flow there. I can feel the muscles start to loosen up. I feel the tension. So that's what you want to realize. There's going to be a pinpoint, meaning wherever the injury is. So let's say the actual tissue is torn. That is what you want to keep in mind. That's something to be painful, to be aware of. But the tissue around it, so for me, the trap and the lat and the posterior portion of the shoulder, okay, I just need to get the muscles turned back on. So use this and stand in front of a mirror, move slowly and move with your breath, and start to train yourself in these ranges of motion to feel the body engaging. And that is the basis of what you're going to do for the next few days or week or two. Because your job is to go from having no range of motion in day 1 to some range of motion and just letting the inflammation do its course and the tissue start to layer down and recuperating some of this at the very beginning in day 1 through 7. Day 8 through 14 or day 8 through 21 is about getting back to a full range of motion and finding where the weak spots are and then applying load. But everything happens slowly, meaning your movement should be slow and engaged. Because what happens is, it's not that the slow stretching is going to be a problem, because you'll get immediate feedback, okay, that's where I've got right now, that's my range of motion. It's the quick jerking. If I were to throw, and we'll talk about this in part 4, but the quick jerking, the rapid movements, that's what messes people up. So your focus is get in, slow range of motion, control, and then start to add 1 pound, 2 pounds, 3 pounds. Start very light and get lots and lots of reps. And if you stay in this range of motion, remember, the tissue is going to be safe, the muscles are going to turn back on, they're going to provide more stability for the tissue, and it's going to help condition it. The thing to remember is that it's not a binary on-off. As your inflammation is going down and your injury is healing, you are getting stronger and your capacity is coming back on. But that means that in the middle, there is a negotiation. It's a constant, okay, what am I working on today? Can I get a little bit better? And this is the importance of having those small wins. And every single day, oh great, I can brush my teeth again. Oh good, I can cut my hair again. Oh good, I can put my contacts in. I can raise my hand. I can put clothes on. Whatever it is. Oh good, I can walk without shoes. Oh good, I can jump. Whatever those things are, you have small little wins that stack up and get you moving in the right direction. So we'll talk about it in the next part. It's going to be about day 21 onward, day 14 or day 21 onward. It's going to be getting back in the game with the skill base and the speed movement. But that's the next series. For now, just focus on gentle movement and getting the confidence back, retraining your muscles and reconditioning your fascia. And remember, you have resources. I put together an entire program that will give you the drills and exercises to recondition and train your body, and the books and the audiobooks that will explain the philosophy of how it all happens. It'll pop up somewhere around this video, the links associated or in the description below. But remember, you're more than this injury. You are getting stronger, you will recover, and you do have a greater potential after this than you did before, because you're going to be stronger and you're going to be more competent and more resilient. So if you like this, make sure you subscribe, comment, all that stuff. And if you are injured, get to work on the stuff. I'll see you again in part 4 as we get all the way out of this and get back to life.